everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and I'm here with my fabulous co-hosts, Jackie and Diana. You might notice that I kind of rushed through that because this isn't actually the start of the episode. This is actually the start of the episode.
Pre-starter.
The pre-start episode. Yes.
Ew,
so what
that's the worst name. The pre-starter.
the preview. So
It's like when you get that sourdough starter. It's like this little like wad or something.
yeah.
You're like, this has been alive for 100 years.
All right, that's enough jibba jabba. What we're actually here to do is talk about behavior analysis and research related to behavior analysis. More specifically, we're here to introduce our very first live episode, recorded live at the Thompson Center for Autism 2018 conference. We're talking all about preparing students with autism for post-secondary education, and we reviewed some articles there. We'll get into that in the audio itself, but we just wanted to let you know if you're a regular listener of the show, or if maybe this is the first episode you've ever downloaded. It's a little bit different. It's our very first live episode, so we had a bit of a time limit, so we hope that you enjoy it. I know the audio it's a little weird to try doing audio in a new location. But everyone at the Thompson Center was so great and gracious to give us that time. So without further ado, here's our first live performance.
Da-da-da.
So we are trying to, we're ABA Inside Track.
Hi.
Hi. Hopefully you knew that you were coming to hear people talk as opposed to why are these people talking while I eat my lunch. So sorry if that's what you wanted to do. Just so you know, we are recording this. It shouldn't pick up any of your talks or comments or anything like that. Hopefully just pick up what we are saying here. So welcome. We are ABA Inside Track. My name is Robert Perry Cruz. I will be the host. I'm the host of our show. We're a podcast about behavior analysis, and I'm joined with my two traveling companions / co-hosts.
Hey Rob, it's Diana Perry Cruz.
They're married. And I'm Jackie, not married to them.
No, it feels like it though.
It feels like it, but we're not married.
In terms of how much time we all spend together. So for those of you who know about our show or have watched our show before, no, you haven't watched our show, you've listened to our show before, welcome. We're a podcast where we talk about a topic related to behavior analysis, and then we discuss some journal articles about that research. For those of you who don't know who we are, I just explained who we are, so now you know.
Now you know.
We are really so happy to be here for the conference, and we're very excited to be doing this kind of our first live taping. So
Live.
it will hopefully go as well as it can be. So thanks so much to the Thompson Center for inviting us to come and do our little show for you. So today's topic, just so you know, if you don't know how podcasts work, they are like radio on your phone. And usually what we'll do is we'll get together and we'll chat and we'll talk about research for, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I'll edit it down to about an hour and 15 minutes. We have 50 minutes today, and we're doing it live. So let's see how well that goes. We're hoping for the best.
Challenge
It's our
accepted.
challenge. Thank you, Jackie. Always up for a challenge. So our topic this episode is going to be students with autism going to college. We wanted to call it Autism Goes to College, but that's one of the articles we're talking about, and we felt we would be ripping them off. So it's students with autism at college. Yes.
Not as catchy.
Not as catchy, no.
Less litigious.
So we'll be talking about 3 articles today. I'll be starting us off first with an article called Autism Goes to College, Understanding the Needs of a Student Population on the Rise, and that's by Elias and White from the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders 2018. And that sort of will talk a little bit about some summaries of what are some of the needs that students with autism might be looking for, might have in getting ready for their post-secondary education. And then Diana will be talking about development of a college transition and support program for students with autism spectrum disorder by White, Elias, Capriola-Hall, Smith, Connor, Asselin, Howlin, Getzel, and Mazefsky from the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders 2017. And that's a little bit more about what are some of the ways that we can teach some of those skills to students with autism. And then finally, Jackie's going to be rounding out the discussion with an evaluation of specialist mentoring for university students with autism spectrum disorders and mental health conditions by Lucas and James, also from Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders 2017. And that talks a little bit about a mentoring program as a means of, is that a way that we can help students with ASD remain in college after they have arrived? All right, sound good, everybody?
It sounds great.
All right, good. You all know, you read those articles, right?
I am ready.
Okay, good. So, let's start with some statistics. Now, all of us here are at this conference because we work with students with autism. And one of the positive benefits of all the work that so many individuals and so many great families have done is that we have an increasing number of students able to go to college because of their academics, their social skills, that minimize challenging behavior. So it looks like in about the next 10 years, we've got about 550,000 students who are most likely going to be eligible to enter the post-secondary education world.
That's a lot of students.
That's a lot of students. Now, unfortunately, only about 45% of these students are expected to apply to or go to college or technical school, which, again, very positive trend. The downside, though, is that of those students who are attending college, only about 39%, based on sort of the statistics that are out right now, are probably going to complete that degree. Now, that's significantly less than typically developing students who graduate at about 52%, and even a little bit less than students with other developmental disabilities. That's about 41%. So, the issue we're running into is while we have more students with autism going to college, we don't necessarily have all of them or as many as we would like remaining in college. And now you might think, well, is it the academic load? And again, when many of these students are asked in various surveys, what's going on with college? Why is it so challenging? There really aren't that many that are endorsing problems with academics. So the academics are usually only about 20% as a minor problem. This is one of the small reasons that I'm having a hard time at college. Much more frequently, you're going to hear students talking about mental health being a concern. So 90% endorsed anxiety as a real problem for wanting to stay in college, 71% depression, and then 61% loneliness. And again, students who rate these as very major problems also have an increased chance of suicidality. I know one statistic in some of the articles we were looking at had about 18% in a survey reporting that they were likely to attempt suicide in the future. So these are really alarming numbers. So it's great that that everyone has come together to work to get students to college, but now we have to work a little bit more to say, all right, how can we maintain their success when they are at college or university?
I'm going to be a little more grim. Just be grim.
We're just going to keep bringing the room down. So.
Bringing the room down. Another thing that's a little bit depressing is that 6 months after someone has graduated from college, students with developmental disabilities are actually less likely to be employed as a paid employee, which is a little bit saddening since they've gotten their degree, but then they can't find a job. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the statistic that I have to contribute is that at this point, the majority of individuals who are being diagnosed with autism do not have a co-occurring cognitive delay, right? So there's nothing that is, presumably barring those students from going to college. And additionally, many of them are getting great academic training, right? We know how to teach people what to do academically in order to get them to college, but it's all those other pieces that we're going to spend this time talking about that are really the struggling points and the roadblocks in order for these students to see success in college.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so we brought you down, but don't worry. There are people in the field, some of them might be out here in our audience today, looking at how can we ameliorate this situation.
It's a big word.
I have been told by at least one listener that they like when I use big words so they can make fun of me for using big words if they see me in person. So now you can all do the same.
Now's your chance.
So again, with a lot of research that's sort of in its infancy, there aren't a lot of, say, results, and here's our single study design or randomized control trials. What we have are a lot of surveys, which are great for getting information, but aren't necessarily great at telling us solutions. So unfortunately, most of what we'll be discussing, actually all of what we'll be discussing, is really survey related.
It's exploratory research is kind of how I would think of it, right? So everyone's sort of getting ready to ask some bigger questions, but first you got to lay some groundwork as far as what are the issues at hand. Yeah. And these guys are doing great stuff. It's just it's all in the works still. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll start us off with some of those statistics, and then we'll move into some more of the practical matters. So Elias and White in their Autism Goes to College, again, probably one of the better research titles I think I've ever seen, wanted to look at, again, a survey. And not a survey of individuals with autism spectrum disorder, but of their parents. Their goal was to say, all right, asking parents with this nice big online nationwide survey, what are the needs that you consider for your child, your son or your daughter, who is in high school, getting ready for college, in college or is not actually in a post-secondary setting at this point.
So this when I was reading this the first time, I was like, why didn't they just ask the individuals? This made me a little angry. I'm not gonna lie. When I read this, like, what parents? Like, parents don't come to college with you. Parents.
I mean, I don't know. Some of them.
Yeah, mine did. My mom did not come to college with me, so I was a little like,
my
why
mom
not?
did my laundry every week when I was still in college.
But
It was
so-
my brother's laundry, but I just threw mine in.
Yeah. So
Sure,
I thought to myself, why didn't they ask the students like what they needed and how they can be successful? And they bring up a good point.
So their reasoning behind this was, one, parents are very invested in seeing their children be successful, which is sweet. They also noted that even some students who are, say, higher functioning don't accurately identify some of the needs and deficits that they might have. I mean, this is true for, I think, for all of us. We might not necessarily accurately say the things that we are really, really good at or really, really not good at.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm fair.
I'm good at everything.
Okay, well, some of us, at least 1 out of 3 doesn't feel good at that. And also, because there is some research to point to parents that are engaged with their children during the transition process, those children do have overall better outcomes in the long run. So, all right, there's reasoning behind their choice. Though, again, it's nice to ask the people themselves, but who you're doing your survey about. But hey, these are the results we're discussing. We didn't do the research ourselves. The authors also wanted to compare the ASD population with the ADHD population. Their thought being, well, so many students with ASD have that comorbid ADHD diagnosis. They have a lot of concerns related to, say, executive functioning. That term is going to come up a lot in the articles we talk about. So are the needs going to be similar? Could we meet the needs of multiple groups of students? Or are there very specific needs that would only really be considered more relevant for our students with ASD? So they asked a lot of questions related to executive functioning in the survey as well. The big 3 questions were asking parents about what difficulties do you think or do you see happening in the college setting, like what social support, difficulty with social support or managing emotions. What are the needs that you either want to see or think should be dealt with in the post-secondary setting? Again, is it academic tutoring? Is it speech and language? Is it help with counseling or therapy? And then finally, what are the strengths and assets of your children? And where are the areas that you think they might have some difficulty? So is it in self-advocacy, their motivation, setting career and life goals? So they asked a whole big litany of questions, and it's a really nice article to read. You have your nice Likert scale, 1 to 5 responses. So this is a great article to look at because they have like 2 pages of just tables and tables, but we have 50 minutes and 2 more articles to talk about, so I'm just going to get right to the point. What the authors found were that the parents of children who had ASD, an ASD diagnosis, listed social difficulties as their principal concern. I mean, this is not too surprising, I think, to all of us because social difficulties tends to be one of the key challenges for the students we work with an autism spectrum disorder. Interpersonal competence was another one that came up a lot. So are their children have a hard time listening to other people, cooperating, communicating effectively? Is that us making that sound?
No.
Okay. And then also so social interactions. And then this was very different than the ADHD group, whose parents endorsed time management as a problem, or attention, being able to focus attention in school. So again, we saw the results that we would expect to see. Social deficits are a big concern for parents. I feel like that is us.
Okay. Well, we can't do anything.
Oh, we can't do anything about it. All right. And having social support in school, and then helping students with living arrangements and independent living skills was also one that kind of came up as a key concern. So those were the main concerns. So we have an idea of what do parents feel are important needs at school and deficits they're concerned about. So let's talk a little bit more about what are we going to do with these numbers.
That's me.
I'll throw it to you.
That's me. Okay. All right, so the study that I looked at laid out an overall program that they're proposing as a means to address how can we best help kids transition into a college setting and also provide support to them when they're there. And the program that they developed, this was White and colleagues, was called STEPS, and that stands for Stepped Transition in Education Program for Students. with ASD. That part is not part of the acronym. And they laid out some of the statistics that we just went over. There's certainly going to be more students entering into a college environment that may have these challenges. And they brought up two good points I think are worth mentioning here as well. They found that students who disclose their diagnosis to their college earlier are more likely to have a better outcome during their college time period. And keep in mind that once you're over the age of 21, in order to access services, you would need to, most likely to disclose that diagnosis to someone in order to get additional support services. And then the other point that they made was that for students with autism, participating in transition planning and also having a goal and setting a goal of college enrollment also predicted better outcome. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. Something's making a loud sound. So, predicted better outcome of actually going to and attending college. So those were two of their goals that they really wanted to focus on as they were developing this program. So they were looking at both promoting the transition to college as sort of their step 1 goal, and then their step 2 goal was overall improvement of the college experience.
One thing that I found notable there was that when students reach 21, they do have to advocate for themselves.
Yep.
And that's something that we don't necessarily teach in high school settings, right? So students, when they're in high school, automatically get services provided to them by the school district. So it might be beneficial if they're eligible, right? So it might be necessary for us then to take a step back, and even though students are able to
I don't know why it's doing.
Sorry, I was reading and talking. So even if students are able to access those services automatically, it might be beneficial for us to teach them how to advocate for those services in high school when the services are already being provided, so that when they do get to college, they have that repertoire already so that they can again access those services that they might not get if they haven't advocated for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So they laid out 2 goals that were fairly cognitive in how they're being described here, but their 2 main goals that they saw for their STEPS program was increasing self-determination and increasing self-regulation. So as behavior analysts, I want a little bit more from those terms, right? I'm like, what does that mean? But they did go a little bit further in operationally defining them, so I'm going to tell you what they said. So for self-determination, they broke that down into 3 behaviors. The first one was self-knowledge, meaning being able to articulate challenges related to the diagnosis, so your own diagnosis, and how those challenges may really manifest in the college setting. So being able to talk about that. The second was self-advocacy. So just like Jackie said, identifying a problem and then being able to speak up and request help to address that problem.
That's hard too. And research has suggested that someone of neurotypical development may also have those challenges, so even more important for us to be teaching those skills at a younger age set.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, this is not specific. Oh.
Hey.
So
the rainstorm's over.
I don't know what happened.
Let's just pretend it was ambiance, folks. We'll enjoy the show better.
Yeah, and that's the point I want to bring up too, is that several of the things I'm going to go over here, these are not specific to this population with this particular diagnosis. 17 and 18-year-olds entering a college environment, almost everyone needs help on these types of skills, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a matter of, are you going to sort of quickly pick up the pace and be able to adapt and roll with the challenges of college, or will you perhaps need some additional assistance to get there? The third goal underneath self-determination is goal-directed behavior. So I know where I want to get to. Do I know how to get there? And can I identify additional steps needed to reach that goal and engage in those steps? So self-determination, and then self-regulation is even warmer and fuzzier. But the way they defined it was monitoring, oversight, and modulation of behavior, emotion, and cognition. Okay. And to break that down, they talk about executive functioning here, which we already mentioned that term, but I feel like we should define it a little bit more, because sometimes I'm still a little fuzzy on it. But Jackie, you summarized it really nicely for me the other day. Mm-hmm. Can you do it again?
Sure. Okay. So I usually think about executive functioning as all of the steps you need to get a goal, go into a goal. So my example is I have to get out of the house every morning by 9 a.m. in order to get to work on time. And it is 8 a.m. And so what are the steps that I need to do in order and in efficiency in order to get out of the house at 9 a.m. And that's like really hard, right? Because mornings are the worst. And
you
so
picked,
I
like
like
the
to
hardest example.
Yeah, right? So I think that's a good way to think about, like, what are the steps that I need to take in order to get my maximum goal of getting out at 9 o'clock so that I get to work at a reasonable hour.
Yeah. And everything takes longer than you think.
Oh, 100%.
So trying to like plan for that. Some shoe is going to be lost. You have to find all the shoes and plan for that. It's not easy, right?
No, it's not.
So that's a challenging skill, but one that they felt fit underneath the self-regulation goal, as well as overall emotional regulation. So sort of checking your emotions in a heated situation. Stress management, what techniques can you use if you're feeling stressed to calm down? Problem solving, recognizing when there is a problem, all the potential solutions to that problem, choosing one in the moment, and then implementing that potential solution to the problem through your behavior, and goal setting. So lots and lots and lots of stuff, right? And of course, we could go and further operationally define and break those things down from these definitions, but I think that this does give us a good picture, because you're like, you just go to college and it's fun, right? But no, there's so much going on, and this is the first time, and most people are living independently and needing to make a lot of these decisions on their own, which goes for any college student. And it's a lot. It can be a lot for anyone. So I think this does a good job of kind of breaking those down and helping give us a little bit of language around, what does it mean to be independent at college and be successful at college outside of just going to class and getting good grades in class. So the STEPS program uses these two components. There's a level 1 of the program, which is really intended for high school students transitioning into college, and a level 2 of the program when students are already in college. And it's intended to take about 12 to 16 weeks, so 1 semester to go through the program. And they really stress that it's meant to be individualized. So not everyone's going to work on time management or self-regulation or goal setting. It's depending on what's appropriate for that individual. And you don't have to always do step 1 to go into step 2. It's just however you fit into the program, you can participate in that part. But the step 1 has really 3 components to it. Counseling sessions, which are provided in the school by someone who's the main contact person for the student in the school. Provided every other week and focuses on each of those components that I just described, the different pieces of self-determination and regulation. There's online course content that they also work on, so they have homework to do. It's a little hybrid scenario going on there. And then a once-a-week school personnel in-service meeting where they have a point person who's perhaps the guidance counselor, a social worker, a special education teacher. And in those meetings, their parents may be present as well. They're going to reiterate and go over the goals that they have and how they're working toward them. And then the final piece there is there's an immersion experience component. So they're going to practice these things in the school, but then also take trips, go visit a college campus, see what that's like, and start to get a feel for what challenges they may face there so they can tailor the program appropriately. And then step 2 of the program is supporting students who are already in college. It has a very similar model, but it's just 2-fold rather than 3-fold. So there's counseling sessions that are once a week, and there's online content, but there's no longer that point person who's your personnel in-service person, because the intention here is that you're more independent. However, the counselor does function as a coach. They'll call, text, email the student throughout the week to make sure that they're doing okay, they're available for assistance, and then there's a focus on social integration within the campus and community outings that are going to bolster social interaction as well. So it sounds cool, right? They did a little pilot work on it. The pilot work went well, but there's not a lot of hard and fast data for us to look at yet. But the good news is they are in the process of running this as a randomized control trial, so an RCT comparison between students with autism receiving the STEPS program and other students with autism receiving what they just call transition as usual, or TAU.
So probably very little.
Yeah.
Just regular old go to college. They do have the option of transitioning into the STEPS program if things aren't going well. So that's nice, right? So that's still ethical. So those are like in progress, and they should have hopefully some more data for us to look at later on down the road so we can find out if this works. But the model sounds great.
Hey everyone, sorry to butt in real quick, but I wanted to make sure that you remembered or heard for the first time that ABA Inside Track is ACE approved, meaning by listening to this episode, you can purchase CEs. Just do that by going to our website, abainsidetrack.com, clicking on Get CEUs, and then entering some helpful information, including 2 secret code words that you will need to prove that you listened to the episode. And the first of those code words is LAYER, L-A-Y-E-R. All right. Back to the episode.
One nice thing that we could do right now, if you're like, what can I do right now? Like you're listening to us, you're like, that STEPS program sounds interesting. I know. Is that you could use this in terms of single subject design, right? So if you have some participants that would be a good candidate for the STEPS program and you wanted to talk to them, you could operationally define what they would need, your specific student, and run them through the STEPS program to see if it would make it meaningful for them. So that could contribute to the literature if you're looking for something that you can do right now before we get actual data.
Mm-hmm.
Several of these authors are at Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so that's one possible way to increase the ability of students to feel comfortable going to college or be ready for college. Let's move into one of the ways that's being proposed to maintain abilities or maintain skills in college. And Jackie, that's you and mentoring.
Yeah.
Mentoring in the UK.
Mentoring in the UK. So
Do you know how I knew it was in the UK? There were U's all over the place in this article, like honoring whilst. They said whilst a lot.
I didn't get it. I didn't catch it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I tried that joke on the plane. I don't know why. It didn't work then. Didn't work now.
I didn't get the joke multiple times.
To your seatmate or to Jackie?
To me.
Both,
I didn't get
unfortunately.
It. So one nice thing is that in this study they talk about how we really want to make sure that we're promoting.
Is it your computer?
Maybe. I don't think so though. One thing that we're promoting successful integration into college, and we all know it's a difficult transition for most of us when we start college. So one thing in England, they have a student finance committee that provides something like EIDEA here. It's called the Disabled Students Allowance. And so they suggest that students should be provided a specialist mentoring service at college. So what that means is that they would have one-to-one supportive meetings every week with a professional mentor and then the student mentee. So it would be this one-on-one support, and DSA would pay for it. So that's really nice, right? So it's out of the university funds. The university doesn't have to pay for it, but it's there provided for all the students. One disadvantage is, though, is that they say you have to meet every week, but they don't actually tell you what you have to do in those meetings, right? So how many of you have had that experience? You're like, you have to do this, but I don't know how. That's really challenging for us, right?
Yeah.
So what this study proposes is a plan that these mentors or we can use to help support our students. So they wanted to evaluate the effectiveness of this mentoring opportunity. But again, this was what they called a mixed method design, which is just interviews and surveys, which is helpful to find.
Those are the 2 methods?
The 2 methods are interviews and surveys.
I mean, 2 things makes a mix, so There you go.
So it lays the foundation for us, but again, this is a big call for action to us, right? So we know what people feel about it, but we don't know if it actually works. I
think there's something to be said too for research that has that, social validity component to it. But usually you want to tack that on to and these are the actual factual results of this mentoring program.
Right, so it's a super awesome starting point.
It's a very good starting
point. So what they looked at in the survey, so they provided a survey to the mentees that had a diagnosis of autism and also had a diagnosis of mental health conditions. So they had 2 separate groups. And the survey looked at satisfaction of the mentoring program, academic attainment and university life, social relationships and skills, the well-being of the student, the mentor relationship specifically, and if they've given any exam support. So they did this throughout the year. They gave evaluations in the fall, in the spring, and then at the end of the summer semester, and compared the results of the survey from students with an autism spectrum disorder to students that just have a mental health condition. And what they found is overall, the best predictor of success of this one-to-one support mentoring program was the relationship between the mentor and the mentee. That's not surprising, right? So you all know if you have a good friend and they're helping you through stuff, that you're going to rate that as positive. So they said that this was the biggest factor, but they don't tell us how we can do that, right? So the mentors got little training on how to be a mentor, so it leaves us wondering how we could be good mentors in those situations. So when I was reading it, my biggest recommendation was, hey, we could use behavioral skills training. We could use behavioral skills training with our mentors to give them instructions, give them role play scenarios, have them be provided with feedback like during our training sessions to make sure that all of our mentors are adhering to the same types of things. There was two participants in the mental health condition that said that their mentor sucked, basically. They're like, we hate them, and this is the worst thing ever. I love that. But when they moved to a different mentor, they were like, wow, this is an amazing experience. So yeah, that happens sometimes, right? Like you have a not great relationship, but if we had this behavioral skills training, we could really look at why that mentorship didn't work to look forward in the future.
And you can't just count on your mentors to be awesome, right? Like that can't be your independent variable. Awesome mentor that we didn't train, that we just found.
No. Well, I mean, let's give the mentors a little more credit. They didn't just pull them off the street and say, "You're a mentor. What do you think these kids could work on?" It was a lot of they were old. Nice. They were usually older. I think the mean age was like 40, 44 or something. So they had experience as mentors. They received some specific. Not that old. I mean, they were older. I used the comparative. Mm-hmm. They had additional training in the disability specifics, right? Yep. So if they didn't have it before, they received some. So it wasn't no training whatsoever.
It was didactic training, which is okay, right? But we all know it's not the gold standard for training. Mm-hmm. Didactic training means just lecture-based. So we can all sit and listen, but that doesn't mean we can do.
Mm-hmm. So while the one predictor that they had for this, Jackie, was that the positive relationship or folks reported this as a positive experience if they felt they had a good relationship with the mentor. They did get a little bit more sort of into kind of some of the tasks that the mentors did, though. Right. They didn't just leave it at that.
No. So more in depthly, what they did is that they looked at whether the mentor helped them navigate university life. So we all know that when you go to someplace new, you don't know where the bathrooms are. You don't know how to get your food. If you have a question, if you're sick, where do you go? So the mentor served as that point person for both the students with the mental health condition and the students with autism on helping them navigate those, tough questions early on. Like,
Jackie, you have to use the term they used in the article. I know it wasn't your favorite.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't my favorite. So they said they served as a bridge between the university and the student, which is true. It is, but it's not very behavioral-like. I would like a definition. So I like the point person better.
Say it again. What were they?
They were the bridge.
The bridge.
Yep, the bridge. So another thing they looked at is helping students learn social relationships and skills. So we've all been to college. We've all had that 8 a.m. class where maybe the professor sleeps in. I've done it. And then when you get to class...
As the professor or as the student?
Both, right? Let's be honest. And so when you get to class is canceled, right? Or it's in a different room. Or you have to do an online assignment. That requires you to be very flexible. And that's sometimes very challenging for students with an ASD or a mental health condition. So the mentor would serve as a point person to help teach those flexible skills that we all need to be successful in college. And just sigh and say, okay, I can go home and do something else besides wait for my professor that's not coming to come to class. Right. Yeah. So that was one thing that they looked at. Also social relationships. So in Rob's study and in Diana's study, we talked about loneliness being a big factor of students not doing well in school. And so this mentor serves as a friend in a way, right? So that's a support person to help them navigate the crazy things, like crazy party lives and crazy interactions that is college. So they're living in a new place potentially. They're living with multiple people, sharing a bathroom. That's creepy in and of itself, right? We all know that. So that mentor is really...
You have a very wide generalization about what the college experience is like. It's a lot about bathrooms and going to parties.
And going to parties.
And being late to class or not showing up to class.
Yeah, but so those are all things that you might run into that maybe as a parent you might not think about to prep your child. And so that's something that the mentor was there to help. So the mentor could help them in a moment's notice, right? So it wouldn't have to be those weekly meetings. They could call their mentor up at any time. And that was one of the positive feedback components of the essay, is that mentees loved having someone that they could call that wasn't their mom or dad, right? Because if you feel like you want to be an adult, you don't necessarily want to call your mom and dad to ask them for help at this point in time. In a couple years, you'll be like, Mom and Dad help me always. But at that point, right, you really want to assert your
really comes
independence.
back around.
It sure does. Yeah. They also looked at exam support. So how do I access services if I'm taking my exam? How do I study better? How do I access different parts of the curriculum in the university? The mentors also served as a point person for that. So they really did everything.
They did. One of the things I know they mentioned is, on the one hand, the students really rated highly that friendship that they created with the mentor. That was concerning to me, and I think even the mentors mentioned it in their surveys, that while they liked that they were friend-like, or they appreciated being able to build a friend-like relationship, they were very wary that there was a power differential between them and their mentee, and that while the students, and I mean, I think they just called them, my mentor is my friend, the mentors were very aware of, I am not their friend, I am engaging in friend-like behavior, but we're not going to be, we can't be friends. That would be a different relationship.
Right.
So I was kind of wondering, how much that, would that continue to be the trend, or could that be a problem?
I think just speaks to overall social awareness of the types of relationships that you may be encountering in college, and just how nuanced some of those discriminations can be, right? So it's just one more thing that we need to try to teach through this whole process.
Yeah, so they also asked the mentors how they felt about this experience over the different 3 semesters, and all of the mentors said that this helped to promote their skill development, to help promote their awareness of, how college works, in a sense. So they all felt very positive about it, but they again were wary that there was this imbalance of mentors go home and they don't consider their mentees their friends, but the mentees might consider them their friends.
And one of the pieces that the students found to be most positive was that the mentors were very flexible.
Yes.
Which again raises 2 points. One, how flexible is too flexible in terms of setting up times. It's good if you're at a social event, which might happen after hours, to be able to call your mentor to ask for advice. But is that more than the mentor should be, can do to maintain a healthy therapeutic relationship? And then,
right.
so that's certainly a concern.
And it would be a challenge, right? So as a mentor, you'd want to be able to watch TV at home without the phone ringing every day, right? I love my programs. So, but I also want to be able to be available for my mentee. So that I think that might be a struggle when you're looking at this mentor-mentee relationship, when you're looking at the flexibility. Like, how flexible can you actually be without the mentor then not having a personal life outside of a work life?
And then also in terms of content, because we have a general sense of some of the endorsed positive content that occurred, but we don't actually know from the article, what did the mentors do? So if part of the mentor-mentee relationship was they were so flexible, was it that they just would talk about anything whatsoever? And if so, that's less of here's sort of a plan of some areas that we want to focus on, and more just, is this a person who can build a good relationship? And, if this is a program that one would like to expand or do for more students, you need to have some sort of a training base to start from. It can't just be, let's hire a bunch of people who seem friendly enough that can maybe make friends with different students with different disabilities. That's not really necessarily going to lead to effective progress or planning. And we don't actually know whether there were effective results other than people seemed happy about the overall experience.
Right, so now, and if you've listened to our show, this is the end of the show, it's the tail end of the show that we like to call the dissemination station. And we've made this so that I can make the train sound every time. So I'm going to do it for you because it's my favorite thing to do. And then we say, we've arrived at the station.
Or something like that. It changes every time.
But I love making that. So here at the dissemination station is where we can talk about what we can do next.
Yes.
So now we've read some articles, we've talked about the topic. Now, where can we go from here? How can we use this in our clinical practice, in our daily lives, in our research lives? Where can we go from what we've read?
Yeah.
You took my dissemination
I
station.
know, I always
spiel,
wanted
Jackie.
to do it, and
That's
I
fine.
never get to.
This is a good event. I can't think there's not much I can do about it because we're in front of people.
Right.
There are some topics where we get to this point where we're like, yep, most everything's been done, but this topic is the opposite because everything still needs to be done. There's so much work I think that could be done within this area, and what I wrote down, if y'all don't mind,
You do
I'll
it.
tell-
Go for it.
Okay.
Go, you do you.
Is that when we all, and many of us work with parents of kids with autism, and going to college, like that's one of the really big end goal, best outcome scenarios, right? It's like I want my child to go to college and be independent and be successful, and those are wonderful, wonderful goals. And I think that we as behavior analysts do a good job of teaching the academic side, right, of how you might be able to get to college. But there's so many more challenges and considerations that need to be taken into account in order to be successful there. And that's, like I said, it's some growing pains for any student, but in particular one that may have some social difficulties could be a really, really big challenge. And as I started to break it down, I was like, oh my gosh, there's just so much. And I wrote down things like, the subtle social inferencing that needs to occur, nonverbal communication skills, critical thinking, complex problem solving as it relates to social relationships, let alone dating, an understanding of consent, how to write an email, how to write a text, scheduling, organizing, studying, how to do your own laundry, money management, understanding of pop culture. Like there is so much that goes into being a fully integrated, participating student in an overall college culture. And there is an unlimited amount of work I think that needs to be done in this area, and quickly too, because this is a situation that's happening right now, and we're only going to continue to see more students who need these types of supports in the college setting. So we know a little bit about what to teach. I think we know some about how to teach, but we need to think about when to teach this, right? Should it happen sooner, later, probably sooner? And then how to fund it.
Yeah, can I talk about that one, because that's sort of my kind of boring coming back to. I don't want to be negative.
Let Sarah talk to it.
Oh, okay. I don't want to be negative, but I definitely do. The mentor study focused on something that is funded in the UK. Our closest equivalent, either IDEA or the Americans with Disabilities Act, really focuses on accommodations. How can we make the playing field level so that everyone can be a part of these universities? What that doesn't really fund, and I don't know if you could get any funding for it outside of, say, grant writing, is what about everything else that seems to be more important even than just academic support? So there's a lot to support people being able to access academics, but not necessarily how to teach them to engage in social relationships. But that's the problem that needs to be addressed. And where does that money come from? Is that just universities will pay for that? Is that private pay? Is that some cottage industry is going to crop up that helps students with that? I don't know. These are big questions that will just need to be answered, unfortunately, even when you know exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah, so in talking with our friend and colleague Sarah Lachago, she brought up some interesting things that are happening at the University of Houston Clear Lake. And if you want, Sarah, you want to
come on up.
Speak on it just for like a minute or two? Fill us in.
Sure.
Yeah, come on. Is there room? Don't fall off.
We're not liable if you fall off.
I'm going to pop a squat. Thank you for inviting me up here. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Lachago, and I am a faculty member in the Behavior Analysis Master's Program at the University of Houston Clear Lake. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's so fun to be up here with you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is just quickly plug some of the programs. We have our Center for Autism and Developmental Disabilities, and we have quite a few programs or clinics as part of the center. So we have our severe behavior disorders research clinic, verbal behavior clinic, so on and so forth. But there's two clinics that I want to highlight that are headed by Dr. Dorothea Lerman. And one of them is our Connecting to College program, and it is research that she's currently conducting with our population of individuals on our college campuses who are diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. She started this, I would say, I'm going to say 2 years ago. She actually hasn't even presented on it yet. She's presenting on it for the first time in Canada in a few weeks. So you're the first.
We scooped it.
They did scoop it, and I do have Dorothea's permission. I've been texting her. I do have her permission to present. So let's just talk very briefly about it. It's a two-pronged program. So what she did is she hooked up with the disabilities offices at the university. So that's the first thing. You want to get institutional support. It's the first thing that you do. Go talk to your disabilities office. And it's a two-pronged program. So it offers services or support to the actual students who self-disclose a diagnosis. So if they choose and they say, I'm having some trouble, and it can be just supporting some social skills, study habits, things like that, then we work with them, developing a treatment program. We do direct observations, the whole thing. We do what we do. But we also lend support to faculty members because some students won't self-disclose. We have faculty that say, look, I don't know if this person's on the autism spectrum, but I know that it seems like they're having some difficulties in the classroom. They're dominating conversations. They're coming to my office hours and they're just talking to me the entire time about things that aren't really relevant. I don't want to insult them. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to stigmatize. I want to encourage them to come by my office or talk in class. But I don't know how to handle this. So we also offer supports to our professors as well. And so I have she sent me numbers because that's what Dorothy does. So far we've served 19 students. And the program evaluations say that 100% of the students are satisfied with the program in the survey. So we do actually ask them, did you like this? Did this help you? Did you feel good about your experience? From this program, she's actually conducted research in teaching conversation skills to develop friendships. It's also incredibly difficult research to do, which is probably one of the reasons people haven't done it, because we got normative samples of people engaging in conversation, and it's just kind of weird to try and understand. So for example, you might say something like, we're going to work on interrupting behavior. Well, we actually interrupt each other quite a bit in the course of a normal conversation. It's just we seem to know how to do it. Right?
Right.
But it's sort of a normal part of conversation. Most of us just seem to kind of get when and how to interrupt. So there's a lot of, as they were talking about earlier, nuance related to teaching the social skills. So, but it's part of a first study. It's part of many where they're working kind of in the context of these clinics and programs to generate some research on just teaching them how to have a conversation and develop some friendships. And as part of this, we also have our vocational training program where we work with students to actually get and maintain jobs as well. So that's the plug. And if you are interested in learning more, you can email Dorothy. Let me find this. Get your pens out if you're interested in learning more about what she does at the following email address. It's connectingtocollege, all one word, connectingtocollege at uhcl.edu. So that's connectingtocollege at uhcl.edu. And if you want to pop her any questions about any of these programs, please feel free. Thanks for the time, guys.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely.
Another thing that has been happening around colleges is there's smaller foundations that will partner with colleges to provide some more social-based support for students that actually may not be in college or may be in college but need that social friendship. So we know that a lot of times when students graduate high school, if they choose not to go to college, they may feel very isolated, right? So if you're not in school, you may not have that place where you can go to see your regular friends. And so one of these organizations is called You're With Us. It's based out of Massachusetts. And what they do is they partner with sports teams, they partner with specific groups on campus that allow students to participate in the activities that they're engaging in. So for an example, at Regis College, where I work, we work with You're With Us, the foundation. So we have students that have a variety of disabilities, cerebral palsy, in autism, and they come to campus and they interact with our team. So if like, for example, on the basketball team, they'll come to practice, although they may not practice, but they feel that support. They'll go to games, they'll go to home games, they'll ride the bus, they'll go to the parties with the basketball team, and it gives them that sense that they're part of a group, right? So that's something that a lot of students may be missing. So we urge you to look if there's any of those types of programs in your area, because it seems to be very beneficial to the students that are part of that.
That's a really good point, and I think the other side of that too that brings up to me is as we're thinking about this research moving forward, it shouldn't all be on the part of the individual with autism, right?
Right,
To fit themselves into the college environment. There's also work that can be done on the side of the rest of the student body and population and their understanding of the needs of an individual with autism and how they can include that individual, right? So there's a lot to be done, and it happens on all fronts.
So if you all go work on this and write an article, we might talk about you and your work on a future episode of the show. So
That is
there's
your
some
homework.
extra incentive for y'all.
Please go create a program and,
Yes, and then
do
do
all the
research
work
on it
and then bring it
and all
back
that
to
good
us
stuff.
so we can know the answers. Yes.
Hey, it's Rob, just butting in one more time with that second secret code word.
He's such a butter.
I know, you know me. We hope you're enjoying the rest of the audio, but in the meantime, code word coming, it's onion. O-N-I-O-N. Onion.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of our time. I want to thank all of you for coming and being such a great audience. I want to thank the Thompson Center for inviting us here. Our show comes out every week. Every other week, we do a full-length episode in between. We do little previews, so if you want to read the research ahead of time rather than hear us talk about it first, you get a chance to learn what we're going to be talking about. We are ACE approved, so while this event itself is because of like kind of lunch logistics, we're not doing CEs for, we actually, by listening to our show, you can apply for continuing education credits on our webpage. We're at abainsidetrack.com. You can email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com if you have questions or thoughts for future episodes. You can find us on any of your podcast apps, whatever you listen to. We're pretty much all over the place on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're running a little contest at our booth in the main hall. We're in the back corner. You'll see our sign. For anyone who either is subscribing to the show or decides to subscribe to the show while here at the conference, we will enter your name for a fun present. It's a mug. Ooh, it's some real big stakes. But, you know, I mean,
With
subscribing,
our name on it.
it's got our name and our picture on it, yeah. I mean, it's a nice mug,
Yeah,
you know. I mean, a whole
one-
coffee, you know, you can carry it around, impress your friends.
Holds liquids.
Holds
in the mug.
liquids, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's for anyone who subscribes to the show. We hope you enjoyed the episode that we did today, and I think we're on social media everywhere.
Yeah.
And
Got it.
we'll be standing around for a couple minutes if you need to take a picture of us, because I think we are on the scavenger hunt too. I noticed that. I think we are, right? Yeah. Oh, we are. Okay, good. So if you haven't gotten your
Cool
picture,
deal.
we'll
All
be
right.
breaking down. So anyway, thank you all so very much for your time, and have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Keep responding.
Keep responding. Yeah.
Whew, well, we really hope you enjoyed our very first live recording. We were so excited to do it. You might have noticed how fast I talked at the very beginning of the show. So
We're working on it.
It was our first time we've ever been told you've got 50 minutes. Usually we record these things over the span of 7 hours, and I edit them down to about an hour and 15 minutes.
There could be little ums.
You could just go forever and ever. It's great. So the live performance, it had a different energy. It was an excited energy. Now, after we did our talk, it was kind of funny because our presentation or our episode that day was on preparing students with autism to go to college. And then it seemed like so many other great esteemed speakers were sharing research related to that exact same topic the very next day. So while I know they'd all done that research ahead of time, I'd like to pretend that they heard our episode and immediately went back and did that research super fast, just because we inspired them. But hey, they had all that stuff ready to go. I'm deluding myself a little. But we had the chance to hear from a lot of other excellent speakers on the work they're doing related to the very same topic. Some of that is discussed in our bonus episode that should be out, if not the end of this week, early next week, where we talk to some of the guest speakers at the conference. But some of it didn't make it into that episode either. So we wanted to share a few extra facts related to preparing students with autism for college. So Diana, you had a chance to speak to one of the students at the poster session who was working on an app, I believe.
So, well, before I get into that, I was just going to back up and say that I agree with you, Rob. It was like
everyone's working on all this stuff right now. So it was really exciting, and it was exciting to hear from other speakers. And as we were preparing this episode, we were like, gosh, it seems like no one's done this work, and it needs to happen. It needs to happen so soon. So it was actually really encouraging to be at the conference. And as we were there, we started to hear about like, oh, well, these people are working on this project, and these people are starting this thing, and this other area is going to have published data soon. So I'm really excited and hopeful that the research that right now seems to be lacking is really just like right around the corner. We're going to start to see more studies that demonstrate efficacious examples of how we can move forward with students transitioning to college, because it really is something that needs to be addressed and addressed soon.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked to a few different people that all had different angles on how they're helping to approach this problem. And one of them was someone that I got to talk to at the poster session. Unfortunately, Rob was video recording someone else, so we didn't get this gentleman on tape, which was too bad because this stuff was really interesting. But his name was Jonathan Huffman. He is working out of the University of Kansas with Dr. Howard Wills and the Juniper Gardens Children's Project, and they have a grant to build and have built this cool app called ASD on the Go, and it has different downloadable modules for individuals with autism who may need to work on a variety of social and daily living skills, all of which seemed highly applicable to individuals who are stepping out on their own and possibly attending post-secondary education settings. So the types of things they're working on are things like starting and ending a conversation, having ways to stay on topic, listening, talking electronically, so
I love
using
that one.
texting or email, nonverbal communication, personal space, joining in on a conversation. Then they had stuff on organization, like using a calendar, planning, developing routines, self-monitoring, and then a problem-solving area too. So what do you do if you make a mistake? How do you ask for help? Being flexible, etc. So all of these have online module components, and then components that are downloadable to an app that allows you to play around with them and utilize them in the natural setting, which seemed really fascinating and fantastic. And you can find out more information related to that by going to asdonthego.ku.edu.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah.
We also talked to a gentleman who works for Autism Speaks, who came up after our talk to help us navigate some of the things that we had questions on. So we had brought up the point that after turning 21, individuals may not have access to services anymore without self-advocating for those. And he was able to help us flesh out some more information regarding that. So, it may be age 18 or age 21, sort of depending on the individual, whether they've reached that age of majority as considered by the public education system. And he talked to us about the varying levels of guardianship that parents can continue to have over their now adult children as they start to navigate this setting. And there's really sort of a variety of options available there depending on the needs of the student. So that was really helpful, and there's more information related to that on the Autism Speaks website. And then, Rob, you talked with a gentleman who was experiencing this firsthand.
Yes, I think one of the most interesting things is, we do this show for behavior analysts, so it's free and anyone can certainly listen to it, but our audience is other BCBAs. And the nice thing about being at the Thompson Center conference was that it was not only a conference for BCBAs, though there certainly was a nice behavior analytic presence, but also for psychologists, for speech and language pathologists, and also for just members of the community who are interested in learning more about research related to autism. So we had a chance to have a parent come up and talk to us about some of the issues that he and his son were going through in preparing for post-secondary life, and sort of navigating the various systems, preparing for what it might be like to move, for one's child to move to another state. Where's the funding for certain services? What services were going to be the most important? Just like we were talking about. And it was just really something that we don't get a chance to do very much in relation to talking about our show. Just talking to someone outside of our behavior analytic field to have a firsthand account of sort of what the experience of having a child with autism preparing for post-secondary life is like. And so it was really great to have a different perspective have someone come up who listened to us and had something that they could share with us. And I felt like we learned from that as well. So it was excellent being in a place where we could share what we knew about the subject, share some research, and then get back from our listeners, which again, we get some great emails and great posts on the Facebook page, but this is the first time we had people who could then immediately come up and give us that immediate feedback, which was a really exciting experience.
I loved it.
It was great. I really do feel like this is a hot topic right now, and that was only highlighted again for me as Rob and I are now watching the second season of Atypical.
Me too. It's so good. I finished it.
Oh, I haven't finished it yet, so don't tell me what happens.
The plot is. I'm just kidding.
But that's exactly what season 2 is about. It's about the main character who's on the spectrum deciding where he's going to go to college and what types of supports he's going to need there. So, at least in the episode I just watched, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool. It's a good show if you guys don't listen to it out there.
Or watch it.
Yeah, sorry, watch it. And in the season that they have now, there is a support group of other students who are preparing for college, and all of those actors do have an autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Which is, I think, a great addition to the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks once again to the Thompson Center for Autism for inviting us to do this live, I keep saying performance, or live taping of our show. It was a real treat. We had a great time. We met some great people. Now, for those of you who usually listen to the show, you'll know that these full-length episodes you can purchase CEs related to listening to this episode. You just need the 2 secret code words. And since it was our first live episode, it was a brand new thing. As a special treat for all of you listening right now, we wanted you to know for this episode, it's a special treat for you listeners. If you're interested in getting CEs for it, well, guess what?
We're on to a commercial. I'm just kidding.
What?
Because you were like, and if it
You'll
happened.
find out after the break.
After the break.
Just kidding.
No. So if you are listening to this episode, you say, you know what? I want to get some CEs from these people. I like this episode. I learned a lot. Well, guess what? You want to get CEs? For this episode, we're waiving our typical small processing fee, so you can get a free CE. You still have to listen.
It's free,
You still have to put in the secret code words, though, because we want to make sure that you listen to the episode. But just as a special thank you, certainly for getting a chance to do our first live recording, we just wanted to put that out to the community. And if you're interested in other topics, well, we got almost 70 other episodes if you have other topics of interest to you. So please think of us when you think of how can I listen to an awesome show and how can I keep getting my CEs so I can maintain my certification. Think of us, won't you? All right, well, that's it for us. ABA Inside Track comes out every other week. In between, we have little preview episodes, and occasionally we have little bonus episodes. We've had a couple months where I think we've had 5 or 6 things come out, which is, it's been a lot of work, but we've had a lot of fun doing it. You can find us online at abainsidetrack.com. You can find us on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, all those great places. Please find us wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love it if you subscribe to the show, and you can get our content coming out every single Wednesday. And if you want to, please feel free to email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with our preview episode and then another full-length episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye!
Bye!